This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We try each week and each day, quite frankly, to bring you interviews with interesting people in private equity and business, also to update you on business news, teach, entertain. We hope you learn something. We hope we learn something. I'm joined today by Holly Buckley. Holly chairs the healthcare group at McGuireWoods. She lives at the intersection of McGuireWoods of private equity and healthcare. We're going to talk today about a very specific subject. One of the keys of leadership is promoting, retaining, recruiting, onboarding new talent. And very few people do a better job of welcoming new leaders and making sure they thrive with the firm in any business that I've seen it than Holly Buckley. Holly, I just wanted to get a couple of thoughts for you on sort of like bringing people in, onboarding leaders, trying to make them feel like they're part of a team and thriving. Can you give us a couple thoughts on sort of how you look at that subject and how you think about sort of the onboarding, the bringing leaders in, not just junior people, but leaders into big established billion-dollar firms? How does that look? How do you think about those issues?
Yeah, thanks, Scott, and very timely as I am here in New York, welcoming our new partner, Jen Shanley, who just joined us last Thursday, who is an expert in healthcare regulatory and digital health, and have been spending my day meeting with her to try and work on some of these exact topics. And I think the key is really trying to make what seems like a very big, daunting organization feel very local and small and accessible, which is the way I feel about the organization, having been here for 15 years and kind of knowing everyone and how everything works. And I think it's trying to make a lot of the connections and the day-to-day feel much more accessible than it must feel when you walk into a brand new organization and have to wrap your arms around it. So I think the first thing is just trying to make connections and make really warm connections so that people are able to utilize them and start to get to know people. So I think that's step one. I think step two is the same as the way that I kind of try and oversee and supervise people, which is expect that they can do everything and anything and not assume that anyone really has limits. I think if you try to draw boxes around people and have specific expectations of them, that's where they'll live at best. But I think when you assume that we're all very, very smart people and can achieve great things, people will achieve a lot more if you kind of assume that the sky's the limit. And so the key is to just set people up for success and let them achieve it without getting in their way.
Thank you. And when you what do you think about when you bring somebody in, a lateral leader, how much do you sketch out what the plan is, what the ideas are, how they're going to integrate in, how they're going to lead? How much do you think about some of those things?
Well, it's interesting. I've actually had this debate with one of our lateral integration leads, and I'm very much not in favor of creating plans for other people. And so we do set out milestones and goals that we want our lateral hires to be able to achieve. But I think the key is they need to set goals for themselves and not have me do it for them. I can give ideas and I can give examples of where other people have been successful and how they've done it. But at the end of the day, goals are very personal. And I think there's probably nothing much worse than having someone else tell you what your goals are and not feeling any autonomy over that. And so I'm a big fan of having people create their own goals with kind of guidance and resources and examples that they can borrow from.
Thank you very, very much. And when is it that do they put together a plan? How do you look at that?
Yeah, so we have like a lateral partner framework that kind of sets the ideas and different touch points and check-ins. But then in terms of the actual goals and milestones, we look at short range, mid-range, and long-term goals. And we look at a variety of things in terms of connections within the firm, connections outside the firm, billable hours, and things like that. And we kind of work together to come up with 3 or so short, medium, and long-range goals. And then I look at that as a living and breathing document And each time we meet, we reconvene and focus on the goals and then see if they need modification.
Thank you very, very much. When integration of a leader doesn't go right, what's typically the reason for that, do you think? What's your experience on what doesn't go right when it doesn't? I mean, anytime you hire a lateral anybody, it's always a bit of a gamble as to whether it's going to be work out fantastic or not, or they'll be at the firm for the next 10 years or not. When it doesn't go great, are there things that we could do differently or things you think about, advice you'd give people about doing differently?
I think the first part of your question, it really does depend kind of on the reason that it doesn't work out. I think it could be culture. It could be that their folks are too much of an island. They haven't been fully integrated with everyone else. I think the advice I would give in terms of how to make it work successfully is to make as many connections as possible and to become, I mean, I know that the topic is kind of integration, but to become as integrated as possible. I think the people we see do really well reach out and have so many different touch points within the firm such that they're telling me about people that they know in the firm that I don't even know. Like, that's when you know things have been successful, is when someone has managed to make this great network that isn't just a reflective of my network or the integration sponsors network. It's kind of their network that they've created. And I think being confident to step outside of your comfort zone and step outside of your lane to really explore areas that are adjacent. I think if people have a can-do attitude and know that there's going to be people around them to support and help and kind of catch them, they tend to do a lot better than people who have a very narrow focus of kind of, this is what I do and this is my zone, this is my area, this is my expertise, and try and stay within that. I think they tend to struggle more.
Thank you. And how much do you look at, do they have to be a self-starter to do that well? How does that sort of look? How do you think about that?
I think it certainly helps. I mean, I think no one can be responsible for somebody else's success. We all have to be ultimately, at the end of the day, responsible for ourselves. And so you could have the best integration sponsor and all the help in the world, but if you really struggle with initiating things for yourself and being a self-starter, I think the task is much harder and can take a lot longer and is much more susceptible to failure. I think the exception to that would be where someone has such a specific skill set and there's a big deficit with that skill set such that they could just walk in and be plugged into a hole, where the work's automatically there and they don't really need to go out and do anything other than, get delivered projects and execute on them. That's just generally not the most common or the majority scenario. In general, there's going to need to be outreach and building, and that I think it's much easier if you're a self-starter. It's just an uphill battle if you're not.
You're 100%. Thank you. And Holly, any final advice on either recruiting or onboarding people? Any final advice you'd share with people?
I think my final thought on recruiting is probably, to some extent, go with your gut. Like, there's a lot of diligence you need to do and a lot of boxes you can check. But at the end of the day, when you feel like something isn't going to be right, don't try to force it, because you're so much better off to have a failed recruitment than a failed hire. And so I think the longer you do this, the more you learn kind of the more you see when you look back, this didn't work out, but I know why it didn't work out, and I kind of knew it ahead of time. So having some confidence in your instincts on it and not forcing things that probably just aren't going to work out.
Thank you very, very much. Holly, it's always great to visit with you on the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast, one of the most talented people I know. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.